I chose the Portola Valley Town Center largely because the buildings are sort of nested in between the trees, as well as how the roofs are sort of angled and without system or any reason, almost like moving on its own. Um, and the designing firm that sort of took this project on was Siegel and Strain, who are very committed to environmental sustainability. They have a lot of goals in mind for every project, but the first four I think are very important, which are for this project in particular, which is it needed the regional and site-specific design, the design for reuse, the green materials used for the project. And I think this directly aligns with the Portola community's values. The old town center was located on the same 11-acre site, but moved towards the northwest corner to relocate out of the San Andreas Fault. The site reflects Portola Valley's primary goals of preserving the western hills of this community from development. So they designed with keeping the building's footprint small by relying on natural lighting, ventilation, and salvaged materials to provide a greater sense of community. Siegel and Strain included soccer courts, basketball courts, and tennis courts, actually, and a large green area for activity in the 11-acre site. The three main buildings, the library, community hall, and town hall, surround a communal lawn and then further are surrounded by trees. Redwood, in particular, to mirror the redwood paneling used on the buildings from the old 1950s school, which is the old town center, that was reclaimed, remilled, and then used to panel each and every building. The concrete and the asphalt from that school was further ground and used as base rock, and then the eucalyptus trees cleared for fire prevention, and then the alder trees cleared for the softball field were used for the floor and columns of each building, respectively. The Portola Valley wanted a very green new town center, both in meaning a lush foliage area, but also sustainable in materials and design. The buildings vaguely are rectangular in shape, but with bump outs to add shape to the otherwise flat facade, all surround a tall trapezoid sort of shaped lawn that has the large base open to the creek and meadow, and is only once you peek through that sort of tunnel formed by trees around the bridge that you get a glimpse of the softball field and the playground. When constructed, the building site was largely open with only a few original trees kept, but now that it has been 17 years since the completion, the planted trees have blossomed to camouflage the site, with only the peaks of the roofs poking out over the tree line. Both Siegel and Strain and the Portola Valley community wanted the site, although largely open for recreation use, to blend in with the surrounding environment of the forest and the hills. The buildings being placed around the lawn is accompanied by a band of pavement also surrounding the lawn with a concrete lip as an act to act sort of like a large bench for the community, and it sort of clarifies the focus of the community, which is like preserving the nature and environment by the whole lawn being surrounded by this pavement. The buildings refuse to stay uniform with the constant changes of angles for the roofs, which many have solar panels actually laid upon them. But notably at the main entrances seem to have the building open up as a gesture of both importance, also as welcomeness to the person. Where the walls are more bland and flat in facade, the buildings resemble barns, which reflects the large equestrian community residing in Portola Valley. But with the window design, although still barn-like, is more current and minimal, but echoes intention. And furthermore, many of the roofs do not meet at a peak, and this is intentional to allow the windows peeking out to be opened to allow natural airflow of hot air to escape. When looking at the interior, the plan is largely open, sort of like prairie house like actually, to maximize the space that otherwise the reserved size of the buildings provide, with the exception of the offices in both the library and town hall. But most of the space for those rooms is allowed by the bump outs on both buildings, actually, for the offices. Additionally, the reliance on natural light is obvious, with either high up windows that aren't really for looking out, but more sort of letting in light, as well as the windows that are almost floor to ceiling in size, and which sort of blends the inside and the outside while still keeping that barrier from the weather and the temperature. In terms of detail, the town center is not lacking. The facade is largely patina redwood paneling, but the rain gutters are painted gray along with the exterior pillars, which sort of mimic pilares that we saw in the sort of modern development of like housing, lifting the cantilevering roof that provides protection from the rain. This gray color sort of ties the building to the gray of the concrete paving that sort of shadows the building. Adding on there, where the building opens up at the entrances, there are wooden slats which aren't attached to the pillar, which indicates that they aren't structural and they're purely aesthetic, which adds to the illusion of making a smaller opening underneath the slats to sort of be more humble residential, but still shows the openness of the entrance to show importance, and to project striped shadows actually on the building because of the lighting. The wooden panels are also positioned vertically on all the buildings to add the appearance of height when all the buildings are limited to a single floor. The layout of every building also only has 90-degree corners, which could be intentional to allow for maximizing interior space by reducing any of those awkward corners that results from angles smaller than 90 degrees. And additionally, the interior ceiling in this library is thinly slatted with wood to mirror the exterior wooden slats, but also to break up the otherwise like sort of skylight-less ceiling, because otherwise it would just be a flat white ceiling. Walking through the town center it is clear who it is designed for. There are wooden chairs like sort of scattered out for open use, an open area around the lawn to allow for a window to the sky when surrounded by all these large redwood trees. A large play section across the creek with softball fields and all the other sort of commodities like soccer fields, basketball, and tennis courts. And a large children playground with its own sort of motifs of the surrounding forest, with sort of this like stump play structure. When walking through the library, the bookshelves are cut off at eye level to allow easy view of the large windows on each side of the building, and with the abundance of small tables for studying or reading and an accompanying children area tucked to the back corner to hide the sort of noise from the invested readers on the other side of the building. The whole talent sort of exudes an airiness with the materials, natural lighting, and plentiful trees, along with this sort of communal vibe built on the utility, convenience, and the natural aesthetic the center provides that embodies the Portola Valley community.